So what do I have planned for today now that I've kind of said I'll be making more, not dinosaur-related videos? That's like the best way I can explain it. More normal videos, I guess? I don't know. But today's video is a very special one because it's talking about arguably my favorite movie of all time. It's one that came out in the 80s. It's really, really cheesy. It's really, really dumb. But that's part of why I love it so much. Of course, I am talking about the cult classic that is Killer Klowns from Outer Space. This shouldn't come as a surprise, but I really, really like old horror movies. Shocker, the guy named King Kaiju likes a lot of old horror flicks. Killer Klowns from Outer Space is a 1988 horror movie directed by the Chiodo brothers. These guys weren't really well known for making movies, but instead working on the visual effects for them. Originally, they wanted to call their film just Killer Klowns and not add the From Outer Space. However, they ended up changing that because it would then be confused for a slasher film, apparently. But that's pretty much the summary of the pre-production for you. Now, to go over the history of this movie as effectively as I can, I'm probably just gonna go from the start of the movie to the end of it and we'll talk our way through it. Just like my therapy sessions, baby, let's go. So the movie begins with that killer-ass theme that I played at the beginning of the video and then kind of cuts to a montage of shots of the town that we'll be stuck in throughout this film. We see the sheriff of the town, who is played by John Vernon and who is by far the best actor in the entire film. He steals the show as that really rough and tough authority figure that you really hate but you also kind of love. We cut to a teen hangout spot where we also see our two main characters for this movie. This is Mike and Debbie, who are the romantic interests for the film. We also see a comet fly down to Earth by this guy's house, Farmer Gene. Thinking that he'll get rich off the comet, he decides to go out and investigate. Careful though, Gene, he might be meteor shit. But instead of finding Stephen King playing an even bigger redneck than this guy is, he instead finds a circus tent. He walks down to the tent, to which his dog is then captured by an off-screen shadow. After losing his dog, the farmer decides to have probably one of my favorite lines in the entire movie.
I'll tear this thing apart with my bare hands!
But this ends up backfiring for our dearly beloved friend, and then this thing appears. Gene is for some reason amused to see this monstrosity, and then the monstrosity kills Gene. You see how I switched up Gene and monstrosity there over the course of 2 sentences? Wordplay is fun. Mike and Deb end up finding and going inside the tent, to which they see this thing. This is a good time to mention that the Chiodo brothers did not just work on the effects by themselves, they actually had a few other people work on them too. This is so they can mostly focus on production because the Chiodo brothers do not screw around when it comes to working hard. Fun fact though, there is a popcorn gun. Yes, there is actually one of those in this movie, and this is probably the most expensive prop in the entire film. And why, you may be asking? It's because it actually shot popcorn. The clowns then chase our duo out, and then we get a few very, very ugly close-ups. Anyway, our duo escapes, and then we get to hear one of my favorite pieces of music in the entire film, the Clown March.
Go, Modi.
The score for this film, by the way, was fantastic. John Massara was the composer for the film, and this is to date probably his biggest performance yet. And like I said earlier, he did an astounding job. So Miguel and Deborah go to the police, meanwhile the clowns start running amok across town. We actually get a pretty cool montage of the clowns just terrorizing random people, like showing up to a house with a pizza, some chocolates, this one guy who is weirdly into the clowns puppet shows. Oh well, he gets killed anyway. We also get the best decapitation in cinema history. We also get one of the most infamous scenes of the film with the car chase scene where one of the clowns drives an invisible car and tries to drive this guy John off the road. Fun fact, the idea of this scene is actually what gave the Chiodo brothers the idea to even make this movie in the first place. Of course, John ends up going off the side of a bridge and supposedly dying, to which the clown gives one of the scariest laughs that I could ever imagine hearing. Another fun fact, this effect was actually done practically by having a rig on that side of the car. The two lights are actually on his feet, so whenever he moved them, the lights would also move with him. Also fun fact, last one, these prop cars that they were using, they were not supposed to be breaking them. However, this was a real car crash that they did, and they did have to pay for that. That same clown goes on to amuse some local bystanders with his shadow castings, and then after another disturbing laugh, he turns the shadow into a T-Rex that eats the bystanders. The cops see it this time, so they decide to try and run the clown over, but he gets away. Meanwhile, Desandra runs into these things that came from the popcorn they got on their shirts earlier. I'm not sure if they have an actual name or not, but I just like to call them the Colonel Bursters. The clowns also catch up to Debbie and decide to capture her, but not kill her like they've done to the rest of the people for whatever reason. Mooney also has his own few shenanigans with the clown menace, but sadly he gets axed off. We then have a really off-tone, actually spooky scene in the movie whenever Officer Dave goes back to look for Mooney and finds not only the two other inmates there dead, but also Mooney as a puppet. And then the clown decides to say something actually really damn terrifying to Dave.
Don't worry, Dave. All we want to do is kill you.
David and the clown then square off together, to which Da Vinci finds out the weakness of the clowns, hitting them in their big red nose. So now we're ready to see the final battle for this movie, which consists of Michelle, David, and these two ice cream guys that I didn't really mention earlier because they weren't really too big in the plot. But now they are, so let the wacky hijinks ensue. After their little crash, these guys decide to finally regroup and head towards the clown house. Sadly, the security guard working there encounters the clowns as they hop out of their little vehicle. Our boys in white and red decide to throw pies at the poor guy, and of course, because they're killer clowns, they're acid pies. The guy playing the security guard here, David Peel, was originally going to be cast as a comedian named Milton Sutman. However, that got changed because the producers thought that no one would recognize him. It's ironic because this is one of the more forgettable scenes in the movie. Producers, man. Fucking clowns. Our protagonists end up going into the ship, to which they find out why the clowns are even killing people in the first place, to drink their blood. Calm down now, that's a different old cheesy horror movie. They eventually find Deb's step, and when they try and leave, they get encountered by the clowns. They end up getting chased through a lot of sets that are actually really, really good. Way too good than they should be, might I add. We also get this funny gag sequence where they come across a set of doors, and each time Mike opens another one, he says, "Another door!" After too many damn doors, they get to the final battle sequence where a lot of clowns try and rush them. This final set was one of the few things made by the Chiodo brothers themselves for the film. Sadly, the set is kind of overshadowed by the still really ugly clowns. The ice cream fellas break in for a last save though, which seems to stop the clowns for a moment, until Jojo the clown arrives. The main trio books it, but the ice cream guys deliver one last funny line.
We can't, it's rented!
Well, isn't that ironic? Jojo the clown, who is played by one of the Chipotle brothers, decides to take its suppressed rage out on this rental car. Dave Chappelle decides to stay behind, meanwhile Miguel and Deborah get out of there. As the very late cops show up, the spinning top spaceship decides to take off. But David and Goliath are still in there. How will Dobrik get out of this? Why, his badge, of course. Cue explosions, a character's survival, and these guys for whatever reason. And there should be a sequel tease here somewhere. Oh, there she is. Bingo. So that was Killer Klowns from Outer Space. And my final thoughts on the movie? It's fantastic. There's definitely some movies out there where you just have to turn your brain off and enjoy the stupidity as it comes flying at you, and this is definitely one of those films, and that is why I love it as much as I do. I'd say to anyone who is at all interested in old campy horror movies, this is definitely a good one to start out with. You guys probably noticed I didn't make as many jokes as I usually do in my other videos, and that is because I just love this movie that much. I just enjoy talking about it. But this video is getting long, so I'll quit gushing about it. And what's the ending gag for this one? Oh yeah. So, what did the clown say to the other clown? He said, "Boy,